Good morning, everyone. It is just after 10:30 a.m. on a Sunday, which means it's time for Sunday Club. And Sunday Club is a channel where every week we do some Ruby on Rails live streaming, and we are working on an app together. And we're kind of using the app to look at a few different things, from how learners might approach things, and we've been putting the kind of building blocks together for the last few weeks. And we're starting to get somewhere. We actually have some processes. So feel free to drop back, take a look at the channel for anything that you're interested in and that you see in the stream today, and you can kind of take a look at those previous episodes. Pretty much everything is in the stream, but also the code is all open source as well. So if you want to take a look and have a poke around, we are going to talk about keeping that up to date in a moment, as usual. But what I want to talk about is what we're going to cover today. So this is kind of the third in a short series of episodes looking at the kind of onboarding process for this app that we're building. And the app that we're building is an app that allows you to build a website for something like a YouTube channel or a Twitch channel or something like that. So you would give it your channel details and it would build a little website. It's kind of like a little content management system or something like that. We haven't really hammered out the details yet, but we're not too fussed about that. So that's roughly the idea that we're doing. And what we've been working on is this idea of a user onboarding. And we had a quick sketch of like a 3-step process we wanted to get to, which is like tell people the name of the kind of site or channel that they wanted to create. We wanted to gather some information about their YouTube or Twitch channel or something like that. And then we want to actually create their user account with an email address and a password, just a basic account details that they're going to ask for. And that has all gone fairly okay. Basically, we got just at the end of the last stream, last Sunday, we got to the point where we had the user account being created, and we just missed a few steps off. We just hadn't, in that second step, we hadn't actually saved anything or taken any information about the channel. We just left the controller there because we knew that we could. And then we just wanted to get to the point last week where we could actually create the user and then have that user log in and do things with them. And we got there. We also didn't write any tests for that process. So that's the thing we want to do today. So I've titled this week's stream like Tidy Up. Basically, we're going to go back through that process and do a little bit of tidying up. On the theme of tidying up, I have actually gone back through and done both commits, or kind of made commits for the work that we did last week. I also went through and checked the tests that we broke a bunch of tests in the work that we were doing. We weren't checking them as we were going. And what I'm thinking of doing is I don't have anything major on today. So what I was thinking of doing is doing the mainstream and getting the thing that we want working. And then hopefully this afternoon doing a homework edition, although I do have something at 2. Where we actually just go through and do the other homework edition I'd done previously, which people really seem to respond to, was just taking a whole bunch, and it's now a lot of work in progress commits, and actually turning those into branches and pull requests and a tidy Git history that you would actually want other people in your team to see and interact with. We have really forgone a lot of that on the stream so far. We've just been like, let's get it out there. But that's not good. It's kind of a necessary evil because we're streaming, but it's not ideal for when we're working collaboratively and we want people to see those. So I'm going to try, if I can't do it this afternoon, I will try and do it during the week. I do think that people did seem to get value. I got a couple of comments on the last one and people reached out just saying, hey, it was useful to see how people tidy those up. And I know everyone approaches it differently, so I think it could be useful. All right, cool. So let's jump over to where we got to, and we'll take a look at this kind of where we're starting the tidy up. So we can see here, let me just check that the stream is all running. Yep, we seem to be all good. And where should we start? Let's start with some tests. Generally, if in doubt as to where to start, let's start with tests. And let's start with tests by bringing the terminal app over. Just bear with me just a second. It's just on the other screen. Cool. So let's bump that font size up a little bit. And hopefully you can see that. So let's take a look. where we're up to. I think we should have one failing test at the moment. Or maybe I fixed it? No, got one failing test. Great. Okay, so we had more. Like I said, I have actually done some work. did it last night and a little bit this morning, because I always say every week that I'm going to do something and then I don't. But I did, and I was really proud of myself. So this is like something I do in my spare time. So forgive me if I don't get a chance to do it. It's just for fun. So we broke a bunch of stuff. So we had written some tests around the controllers that we wrote, and if you remember, one of the things we wanted to demonstrate early on was how we would have like a control panel area, how we would have an area that was, maybe you could view a channel and then you wanted to edit the channel, but rather than just having a normal edit action on that that kind of channels controller, we actually wanted to have somewhere else where that took place. And we looked at a few different options and went with the namespace controller option, just because I'd used it before and found it useful. We then moved that over there. Later on, in a different stream, we then wanted to put user authentication around that. So how do we know that we have a user? So we implemented Devise to get the users in. And then we said, okay, well, now we want to know that someone is logged in. So that was Devise. We then moved to permission. So we then wanted to say, well, not only do we want to know if someone is logged in, we want to know that they are the correct user, that maybe they own that channel or the site or something like that. And so we then implemented Pundit around that permissions aspect. And through all of that, we did some testing around the bits and bobs that we were doing, but not going back and checking that our whole test suite was passing. Again, we weren't making pull requests or anything. This goes back to that tidy up that we're going to be trying to do either today and in the homework edition. What does all that mean? It means that we have basically got one broken test because we broke it in some other code. So if you're relatively new to testing, this is one of the huge advantages, which is that if you're working on some code in one place and you break something in another place, you really are trying to get your tests to indicate that you've broken that. Something has happened. You've made a change, that your code didn't account for something happening somewhere else. Your test fails and you're like, what happened? Why is that happening? And then you find out why, and then you make the changes to either changes to the test or changes to the code to get your test passing, so that later on everything will work as you expect. So ours was around introducing Pundit and Devise, which totally makes sense. We wrote some tests that were like, hey, yeah, anyone can do this. Then we restricted the behavior of that controller action. And then all of a sudden the test was like, hey, anyone can do this. And obviously it failed because it was like, no, only specific users or logged in users can do this. So there are a few commits. I think if we just take a look at some recent commits. Yeah, so you'll see me. So this is where we got to from the end of last week, in brackets, needs tests. That's where we actually want to get to today, is writing those tests. But there was a few bits that we had missed out while we were smashing through that work. We needed to get some helpers in RSpec to be able to test whether the user was logged in or not. They're provided by, I don't know if they're provided by Warden or RSpec. Actually, I can't remember. We needed some test to create a user, so I added some properties to the user factory, an email address and the password, I think. And we also, when we create that user factory in Devise, Devise tries to trigger an email, and it wants there to be some email properties set in the test environment, so I just set those as well. So a bunch of that was just stuff that Devise and RSpec needed to work together. And then we had fixed test for suspensions controller. If we got I think we were using the GitHub app before. Oh no, I have totally deleted that for some reason. I thought we were using the GitHub app. Oh, okay. I have totally deleted the GitHub app. And I have a memory of doing it, but I thought I had done it on my work laptop, but clearly I did it here as well. Okay, that's fine. I think we can do it in, we can use the one in here, can't we? So let's take a look at, we're still on this install Pundit branch. I know we've been on it for forever. Okay, so we added this sign in as a user when suspending the channel. That was the that's that last commit here, fixed test for suspensions controller. We just literally sign in as a user to get that working. Okay, so let's take a look at our failing test now. And there is a reason why I left this one failing, because it perfectly coincides with the issue that we were dealing with right at the end of last stream. And it is that control panel, channels controller show should return a successful response. Cool. Okay, so we were checking that it should return a 200. We just want that to come back. But it's actually a 302, which means it's being redirected somewhere. Okay, well, we can go and investigate that, but we already know the reason, so we can just dive straight in. We added pundit to that controller action in a previous stream, and what we wanted to make sure is that the person who was accessing that controller action owned that channel, and we didn't have that when we originally wrote the test. We didn't have that pundit authorization. But if you remember, both in that stream and also in last week's stream, we found the issue that we don't yet have a way to associate the users with either sites or channels, because all of that model behavior was up in the air. So the relationship there was not defined, and so we couldn't say, okay, well, just tell the user. We hadn't associated the user with anything, so we couldn't say, okay, well, does the user own this site or this channel or anything, because we just hadn't added that yet. So that's where we got to the end of last week, and if we take a look at what that looks like and how we got around it, just to demo it, we can take a look at the policy here, and we literally hard-coded an email address, in which we don't want to hard-code into our tests, which we could do, but literally only this user can now access the control panel channel controller, which makes no sense whatsoever. It was just literally a dummy thing because that's the user we were working with at the time. So that ended up getting committed, which we don't want in our normal Git history. That was just a work in progress thing. So what we really want to do is fix this. And what that means is we want to tell the user what its associations are, and then we can check for those associations when we are doing our policies or authentications, whatever we're doing. And if you remember, that coincided with having a change in how we modeled them. And that change, if I go and jump over to, I think I dropped it in the, I dropped it in the description for this week's stream, that we have one of these Google Jamboard thingies, which is a place where you can see these. Cool. Can you see that? Sorry, I'm just checking. I'm just going to zoom in. Cool. I think that's... okay. Oh, do all the tools not exist when you're signed in? Can I not move around? Oh, okay, you can't move around. You have been signed out. Okay. Let me just sign in. I'm just going to move that over to the other browser just for a second, because it's probably got email addresses and whatnot on it. And use my fingerprint thingy. Sign back in. Okay, cool. So we now should have... Cool. So we now get our tools back. So we can move that around. So originally we had I think we had user and channel and organization, and then a couple of weeks ago, I think we introduced this site one. So originally what we would have done here is to say, because remember we're looking at our in the code, we're looking at our channel control panel channel controller. I think that's what we thought we were going to be administering directly with the user at that time. So a user would have many channels, for example, I think. But now if you look, a user actually has many channels through sites and organizations. So we want to kind of look at the pros and cons of modeling those things. Like, how are we handling that? I'm just going to jump in and see if I can just turn on the monitoring for the... No, it doesn't fix it. Sorry, there's just like I'm using an app to handle the stream audio and it glitches in the background, so I might just I have to just deal with that. It's just in my headphones. Okay. I got kind of excited because there was a Streamlabs update, but I think it sounds like it's actually making that noise, which is incredibly annoying. Okay, cool. So we want a user to well, in this diagram, a user belongs to an organization. Presumably that would be, in an ideal world, has and belongs to many organizations. And then an organization has many sites, and a site has many channels. And then presumably a user doesn't get added to a channel, a user gets added to an organization, and then there is undoubtedly, as you always seem to end up with, some kind of complex permissions network around. So, for example, you might belong to 2 or 3 organizations. They might have several sites, and they might have each one might have several channels, but they only want you as an individual contributor to only have access to one channel within one site, and those permissions would need to handle that. So if you remember, if we watched those streams, we added organization in deliberately to create this complexity. However, that was before we had the site model, so now I've probably added in more. I did deliberately add in more complexity. I probably didn't mean to add in this much complexity in terms of getting all that way around to monitor a channel. So I think let's limit our complexity a little bit. Let's say that a user can only have one organization to start with, and just kind of be aware of that, and then as long as they're a member of the organization, they can do everything to everything that organization owns. I think if we just make it, or do we add uses to the site? Because I think my point is that you always end up, if you're working on a production system, you often bump into something like users belonging to an organization. Something like a billing will often be a common one. So they might have multiple, a company might be paying for multiple things, but they don't get billed for the number of things they have. Like task management, it might be they might have 100 projects. They don't get billed for the number of projects they have. What they actually get billed is the number of users, but each user only exists on like 3, or only has access to 3 of those projects. But they still get billed for them on a per user basis, not a per project basis, or maybe you bill as a combination of the two. So you generally want that kind of relationship to happen at the organization level so that you can say, okay, well, actually we're going to meter the billing on X, Y, Z. That's a kind of common reason to kind of have that higher level association. So let's just start. Let's start building this out. And this is, if you remember, this is all part of our user onboarding. So we're building these associations so that we can actually say, as we go through the onboarding, we're going to add this user to the organization, but also what we're going to do is define permissions or whatever, and also fix these tests on the way through. So it's all related. So again, just before we jump into coding, I am just going to check the stream audio and a couple of other bits and bobs. So bear with me just a second. Yep, that's my voice. Cool, we're all good. Okay, so let's close that down. Great, let's jump into some code. So, let's leave this for now. Let's just come back to that. We know that's broken, and we know that's what's breaking our test. So what did we end up with in our users? Let's make this a little bigger. So I'm just going to use the browser on the other screen just to check the other stream as well, just because I'm trying to make sure that I've got this Streamlabs update and just trying to check that everything works. Everything makes a bunch of noise whenever you sign in there. don't actually know how to see. There we go. It's on there. And this is also up and running. Cool. Okay, so let's go see what we ended up with on our user. Nothing. We ended up with nothing on our user at all. So our user doesn't have any associations. And what do we end up with on our organization? So our organization has many channels. Okay, so yeah, let's keep it simple. Let's say that user can only belong to one organization for now. We can always extract that out to make that more complex later. So again, let's kind of start with our tests and get these passing. I think we added the shoulda matches. Yeah, okay, so let's add in what we think should happen. So we think an organization, we would expect to have many users, and we would expect, cool, we would expect a user, just copying these other tests out. Oh, there you go, it should belong to an organization, great. So they should both pass. Cool, and then as usual, if we go to run those, we should now get 3 failures because we already have our existing failure. Cool, 3 failures as we expect. So we can then, or we can actually, let's look at how the failures change. So we can then add in this has many users. And then here we can say belongs to organization. And if you remember, we, I think last week did do some stuff with factory bot, where we did add the, as an association in a factory, which is like the test version of creating those models. You can just put the name of the association, it will build the association for you. Yeah, so if you look here, this is a good example of, like, rather than kind of muddling through, checking the test errors will often help you and guide you in terms of adding the next step that you want to take. So organizations have many users. Expected organization to have a has many association called users. User does not have an organization ID foreign key, so it's expecting that to exist. So it's kind of telling you what to add next, which is super useful a lot of the time. If we just add in the factory, I'm assuming that doesn't work. So we can add in something. Oh, it doesn't really matter because it would have to be a trait anyway, because we're not going to validate it. Or are we going to validate it? Does a user have to belong to an organization? Because we were setting it in the controller. No, we were saving it and then we were adding it. Oh no, okay. So site.update organization equals user. Oh, okay, we were giving the site the organization, not the user. Okay. No, I think we want people to be able to just create user accounts and then associate them later, because if you don't, yeah, because we might just we might change the user onboarding, I guess, to just ask for a username and password and then take them on. Is there any huge benefit in? I suppose you wouldn't have to do nil checks to start with if you're validating that a user has to have an organization to start with, and our onboarding flow does create the organization first. Oh no, it doesn't. It creates the site first, doesn't it? It creates an organization at the same time, but it would be there before we get to the user point. We could validate it and then remove the validation. So all users would need to belong to an organization. Yeah, okay. It's generally hugely generalizing here. Kind of better to be stricter and then release your strictness rather than be loose and then really wish you had been more strict, because you often can't backfill that data, or you can, but it creates other issues for yourself. Whereas if you clamp things down initially, I'm aware kind of with this project for the stream, I keep inserting weird fake complexity that we wouldn't normally, wouldn't do it to start with. Like the organization's existing at all is totally fake. So I'm kind of just arbitrarily picking rules here. There's not a lot to infer from how I'm doing that. So we might also put on the user model. We might say validate. Okay, I'm just trying to do that from memory. Presence. No, come on. No. Wow, that's my brain really really gave out on that. So validate organization presence, true. So then I think we should have a helper in the like the. Do those validate? Do they come as part of RSpec, or are they? I've used them before. Are they some sort of matcher? Let's just run these ones. So these are all just tests to get our association tested anyway. Oh, validates. Sorry, I was trying to do that from memory, which is never a good idea. My memory for exact API syntax is 0, basically. Just find myself Googling a lot. Can't remember. Oh, okay, yeah, I think that. Cool, so we're just expecting this organization ID to exist. And didn't we find... so we're just going to do the let's do the migration for that now then. We did... it's like references or something. There's like an one of those Rails. Add reference migration. We did one in another stream really recently. User references. Okay, and that gives you the foreign key, doesn't it? Okay. So it's just user, add users. Okay, can I just do organization references? It's wrapping around, which is hard to read. Cool, okay. So let's jump back to our editor. Add reference to the users, so organization, null, foreign key true. So add reference presumably does the thing. Let's run that migration because organization ID contains null values. Is that just in my test database? Can I just do I'm presuming there's a way around that, but I don't really care about the data that's in there. Can I just do cool. Okay, so now we have to have that value, which may so as with all the decisions you're making on the fly when you're live streaming, that could totally come back to bite me on the bum. Let's worry about that later. Okay, yeah, let's just worry about that later. Cool. So now we have to have an organization in order to create a user. So what does that do to our tests? Presumably a bunch of them now fail because they create a user without that. So we already had our failing tests, and now we've probably got more. Yep, organization must exist, organization can't be blank. So what we've already got is our factory. And here what we can do, which we were talking about the other day, what FactoryBot allows you to do is write the name of an association, and it will then create, if there is a factory with the name of that association, it will just create based on that default factory. So I have no idea if that will fix those tests, but let's see what it does. Okay, so we are duplicate key value violates unique constraints of organizations. Oh, that's super weird. Yeah, this happened when we generated that data. Oh, so let me describe what's actually happening there. The ID is being set explicitly on that factory. Let's go and check those. We found one of those last week. I think we ran some sort of script or something that I found. Yeah, it's happening on channel as well, which was basically, I think what it did is went and looked at all the attributes and just created a value based on their type. So ID obviously came back as an integer or something. So let's just see if that fixes that. Cool. Yep, great. So basically, we did it because we had not implemented FactoryBot, but already created a bunch of models, and it was like, hey, do you want to just populate a bunch of data for this? So I quickly ran the script and it fixed whatever we were looking at the time, but it was not that useful. Okay. So now we are back to our existing problem, which is that we still, for this channel, are checking the wrong thing. However, now what we can do is check to see, can a channel have an organization? Yes, great. So what we can say in our new policy, I think, let's delete a bunch of the stuff that's open, close it, sorry. On our channel policy, I think what we can do is say, is the user organization, which we know must exist, the same as the channel organization? Now, I have just written that without checking to see that we have a, I know we have user because we're in a policy, so we get user by default. Channel wouldn't be channel, would it? No, channel would be record. This is my memory of Pundit here, and you pass in your record by passing in the controller. So this is the control panel's channels controller. So what we're passing in, we are passing in the channel, so it would be record.organization. If those are the same, it should work. And in our test, we can say for a user that belongs to the same organization as the channel, so let's create those. So let's create the user. Oops. And that's going to be here. Let's just call it user for now. So that gives us our user. Let's create our channel. But what we'll do is we will create the channel, and the organization can be user.organization because we know that will exist at that point. So what we're doing is saying, right, create a user for us. Let's put let bang on that one because we need that to happen first. No, I don't think we do actually. We want to create a user. We know that we'll create an organization because we just told it it has to. That won't be able to be created without that being validated. So then we want to create a channel. The channel doesn't have to have an organization, does it? No, it just belongs to. Maybe we need to add that validation as well. And then we can say, when we're creating a factory, we can just pass it an attribute. So we can say make the organization the user's organization. So that means this should pass, we think, because in this instance, what that will mean is that the record, which is the channel, organization should equal. They should be the same thing. Ah, hello, Pedro. How's it going? So hopefully Pedro's arrived just as all the tests are passing. Oh my god, amazing. Ah, okay, that kind of worked. Good. Okay, so let's jump back to the visualization of what that looks like. Right. So basically what we're saying here is... okay, we might need to change that because there's a line here. Drew those on my pen on my iPad. There are a lot cleaner lines between those two, so we may need to do that as a through site or something like that. But we can come back to that. So yeah, let's take that up for now. But what we're saying is basically like this user now has this organization. This channel is associated with an organization, and that's the mechanism we're using to check whether the user can do anything. So remember that by default also covers that first thing that we did with devise, which was check that there is even a user logged in at all. So with Pundit, this policy would fail if there was no user. We need that to exist before we can even check it. So we're kind of killing two birds with one stone. Is there a user? Yes. They have to have an organization because we've just validated it. Does the user's organization, is it the same as this channel one? Yes, great. Okay, so let's commit where we're up to there. Just see what so much. So much. Right, let's just try and do right, let's just try and smash through a couple quick ones just because I am gonna go right, so let's do the migration. So we're adding this association, so let's do the migration first. What did this do? Oh, that's just something that actually doesn't need to get commit. Okay, so yeah, I'm going to add the migration in a separate commit. That actually won't go into the PR like that because that would break the build because the oh no, it should be fine. No, it would break the build because we've added in that foreign key has to be present. So we'll smush those together later. But I just want to kind of make it clear to myself what I was trying to do. So add migration to add organization ID to users. Cool. Let's get that in. Then we will do the association. So that's organization on user, and yeah, let's come back to that in a second. Let's add that in, add that in, and that in. So work in progress. Add associations between user and organization models. That's gone over, but these are just work in progress, so we don't mind about that too much. Let's then fix that issue we had with the factories. So we can just want to get, again, because they're all whip commits, we can actually, oh god, that rebase is going to be brutal. We can actually rebase that all the way back to when we created those factories, because that's not made it into master yet. So, okay, fine. So, what time is it? It's 11:13. So if we get this flow finished, we can... that thing at 2. I'm going to try and come back and do the big rebase on a stream because people did message and say that was useful. So remove no, it doesn't really matter where they came from. Remove unneeded attributes on factories. That'll do. I just need to get rid of those. that one is just the temporary one that we're using here. And then this is the test we're actually trying to fix. And this is the fix for it. So use a user's organization to access to this is channels control. I don't really care. This is work in progress. I just need to reference roughly what that is. Cool. Okay, fine. And the device thing is just allowing us to log in when we're not confirmed. We don't care about that for now. I'm going to come back and solve that one. Right. That we want to do two things next. If you remember that lacking association between the user and the organization meant that when we did our user onboarding on that second on the step where we actually created the user, we couldn't associate the user with the organization we'd created. We had to associate something else. So let's go and look at that and see if we can change that, and then we can put some tests around that as well. Right, so here organization, user to organization. Ah, damn it, we still don't have it through site. Are we going to do that one now as well? Yeah, let's do that one as well. So did we add anything to site? This was, I called this stream tidying up. This is just like, oh, okay. So we did tell a site that has an organization. Okay, and what did we tell a channel? Okay, we just didn't tell a channel about sites at all. And so we want to, realistically, this is the one we want to change. So channel doesn't know anything about site at the moment. It only speaks to organization. And when we've made the change to introduce site, we didn't go through and change its associations. So this is kind of a good example. I mean, I've gone asked backwards into something that I think is useful for learners to see, is that, like, that's pretty common that you screw up your associations to begin with. I know I did it kind of semi-deliberately and then completely accidentally, but needing to change that over time, making sure your test coverage covers you, trying to monitor your design as you move forward, like, those are all things that are generally in flux in a code base. So this isn't like just because I'm so early in a project that you know, that's the only reason this is happening. It could be really common that on a well-established project, you'd be like, actually, because of how we want to model people having channels, we actually want to introduce this new thing, and how are we going to model that through, what are the changes in the database for that. The only upsides you get in such an early stage project where you don't have like a production database to worry about or anything like that is you can just, if you need to for time, just blow everything away. Like, you don't have to worry about a slow and gentle 100% uptime migration to your new structure. You're just like, screw it, blow the database away, delete everything. If you haven't even committed to master, you can just blow away all the commits and just, or like do them in work in progress commits and then like rebase it all backwards. So that's your really free time to get your structure right, which is what we're in. We're going to see how we move this over. But the actual underlying principle doesn't really change. You are going to have to change associations over time because new information will come up, and so that is a valid thing to be done. I think it's something that, because you don't tend to do it during like early projects, because you're like, okay, we'll build a clone, or you're following a tutorial or something, they give you that structure, and then early on when you're unsure as to how you might like to approach something, you don't have that confidence, and then you're like, oh damn it, I've backed myself into a corner. So a couple of approaches are really taking a work in progress branch pretty far can be an option. So like really like doing things until you're confident that they're going to work. That can be really painful in terms of getting that work back in, but maybe you're comfortable with like redoing it like bit by bit. Just that first, we tend to call them spikes. That kind of spike, you're not actually going to pull any of the commits in. You're just going to take it as a I'm comfortable with how this is going to work. Maybe you create a dummy project. That's something that I see people do, where they just like create a dummy Rails app. Again, time is usually a major constraint around that. But like you might make a dummy project with just the models that you're trying to simulate and put a UI on it. You might you might try and do it more incrementally, but that is how you would probably approach it anyway on a production database. And kind of maybe looking for references in other code bases to see how they've approached the same thing. So, you know, this is something you're gonna do. That was a long aside, but I think it's useful for learners to see stuff. Right, what are we gonna do? We are going to we've got so many work in progress commits. I think we could go. I think our work in progress probably goes right back to get log earlier. Oh my god, I was going back to installing factory bot. So did he have? Where did we create the sites? We didn't even have a user model. Yeah, I mean we could just blow all of that away. Like, where did the site model go in? Oh, here we go. Add site model and migration. So we when I said you want a long-running branch, you probably don't want one this long-running, but what we could do is drop back to here. Where do we add channels? We could even... that's kind of gone in at this point, so the channel is already... Oh, okay. Actually, so our channel is already associated with our organization on master. So, again, no one's using this project or anything, but we probably don't want to go back and just suddenly introduce site back here, which we could do, but we do want to kind of be good citizens and do it here. So let's say that... So we don't want a channel to have an organization ID, we want it to have a site ID. And we don't have any data, so we don't have to worry about actually migrating that over or anything. So we could just force it through that way. Yeah, like on a production system, you'd already have all these associations in place, and you would then want to move. You'd probably set the association up so the existing one still works as well. Can we just do? So we expect a site to have many channels, and let's okay, let's go to, so we're going to add the test for that as well. So we're going to say we expect you to have many channels. Is that right? Yep. And then if we go to our channel, we it's not a test. I can never remember the syntax for it. Hang on a second. I'm going to Google over here. So we can say that this belongs to site, and then we would expect the organization to have many channels, but that would then be through site. Would we need to change any DB stuff to do that? Do we even... Oh, okay, so wait, we added the association to organization to... We added the belongs to organization to site, but we never added the has many sites to here. Oh man, we really half-assed a lot of this. Okay, fair enough. And that's the one we want to go. So we just don't need the organization to know about the channels at all. Yeah, do we? Because that's when you're in your... Why are we just doing that policy? User organization equals record. And what is the record? The record is the channel. So what would that be? That would then be... so record there is the channel. This is then the site dot organization. Can a channel only belong to one site? Yeah, that kind of makes sense, doesn't it? Because if a site can have more than one channel, you can just add them all. So the organization itself doesn't need to, so we don't need to do record.organization. We could do it through, but I'm assuming that's just a transparent one. Like if we did that, that would just be because there was a through. So we could remove it for now. So if we say a site has many channels that can go, how many users, and it should have many sites. Let's do these so the orders match. Okay, so an organization has many users and has many sites. That matches up with our little diagrammy thing here. Has many users, has many sites. A site belongs to organization and has many channels. A channel belongs to site and then doesn't belong to organization, which means we want to change that file migration because it needs to have a site ID, not an organization ID. And what does it have at them? I'm assuming that's what it has at the moment. Oh, and that's the one we added manually. Yeah, the others all have the index as well. Okay, so we can... Let's make another migration here. Yeah, we can just so add site ID to channels, remove organization. I'm just going to do this in one just because we're so early on. I just want to keep this moving. No, we just did one of these, so we can do the same thing here. And we're adding the reference to... My brain is unable to keep these in, so we're adding the reference to... No, add references to channels. Site. God, I am... Okay, so are we saying that that must exist? Yeah, I think that's fair enough as well. I think that thing we were saying earlier about always being stricter and then removing it. Let's say that in order to add a channel, we have to know where you're adding it to, so they can't be added arbitrarily. And then what there's add reference. Is there we didn't add it as a reference. It was just drop column, remove column. It's weird how the answer is always a random thing. There's no index for it, so we just need to do the remove column, I think. And it is organization ID with no index added and nothing else, I think. No foreign key. Cool. So okay, I've added a bunch of changes there, and I wasn't really tracking them very well because my brain kind of gave up a little bit. But let's see what that migration does. Cool. Okay, so I'm assuming there's a bunch of crappy data in there. It doesn't want to run. Site ID contains null values. Just delete all the channels we've got. Yes, same again. We just don't care. Again, this is only just because we just can delete everything. I don't recommend if you're doing production database stuff, just dropping into production, doing delete all, and being like, cool, that works. Whereas we're just doing some stuff. So I think what we'll do is, because we've got so many whips, we'll try and go back and explain ourselves, I think. And obviously, if you need to run a migration like that in the real world, you'd basically need to do some sort of backfill and make sure that was being, and also make sure that that attribute was being written as new records are being added. So you basically just need to make sure if you want to try and add something that is going to be null coming out, or you can set a default value and then go back and change the default value. Like, you can do stuff. But again, if you haven't got that strictness to begin with, you would probably add in. You wouldn't add them in as you would allow them to be nullable. Go and add the column, backfill the data, and then not allow them to be nullable. It would all depend on what your setup was, I would guess. You could do a bunch of different stuff, depending on how much you care. Cool. So got a bit lost there in where we were up to in the tests passing, because presumably now we've just broken that association in the policy. Or we have just put a typo somewhere. Site has many. Okay, because I was typing the those matches, those RSpec matcher thingies. Oh, apparently did I do that in Mol's site? Are we? Oh, I didn't save it. Come on, let's get it together. Let's get it together. Cool. Okay, so everything's broken. Because we had done everything with this association of an organization. So again, if you were doing this on production, we would need to have kind of resolved that in a neater way. But we're just going to go through and bash through these. So channels, controller. Is it for the control panel one? No. Presumably it's just the factory itself is wrong. Oh, I've already forgotten which one we changed. Right, so in the channel factory, it now has a site. Okay. Cool, so let's fix this one here. Is that in the control panel? Just going to do these in no particular order, just as they're coming through. So this would then be site. So got channel. The channel would have created a site in the factory. Now the channel would already have the site, but we would need to create here so we know the user has an organization because that's required. We then create a site with the same organization. We then create a channel with that site. And then we tell it to use that site when it creates the channel. For a user. I'm not sure that context is still 100% correct, but then what we want to do is change the policy anyway. I think that should be right. So user organization record site association. I'm just going to fix these so they keep coming. So channels should belong to an organization. I thought we'd removed that one. To belong to site, and it should validate presence of site, I think. So we're doing loads of tidy up today, so so we're checking that the association exists and that it validates the presence of that association. So we had 7 failures, we should now have 6 or less. Nope. Channel did not properly validate this. Oh, did I not add the validates line? Okay. It is validated, I think, so that is something we missed on the model. Totally doing this in a very disorganized way today. We have validated some of the others, so we can just lift this, plonk it on the channel. Let's put a line between those two. So now we should have at least one less failure. Cool. What we've got here, organization must exist for channel. Organization must exist. Okay, so failure and the suspensions create. Just not going to do these in any particular order, so channel. Is that created in the factory for the site? Yep. Creates that as well. User creates organization. Okay, what's missing from that? I think it's just this last one. So what is being created that needs validation for the organization must exist? But on the channel factory and on the user factory, they both exist. Ah, no. Okay. Oh wait, hang on. If I and the channel, I cannot hold this in my head. But this channel doesn't need the organization. The user does. Okay, so is it that one or that one where it's breaking? Just gonna run that. Am I in the right test? No, I'm totally the wrong fucking test. Channels control the show. Right, I'm in totally the wrong fucking test here. That doesn't help at all. I'm in the wrong test. Right, so control panel, channels control the show. Sorry about that. Control panel channels control the show. Here is the right test. Right, okay. So user. Oh, does that need to already exist then? Is it a case of ordering? Validation failed organization must exist. when you create the channel? What? I'm totally missing something really obvious here. Oh wait, hang on, have I left that belongs to in? Oh damn it, okay. That's now gone. Okay. Okay, right, left that belongs to in. So, was that the same issue on the other ones? No. Channel.organization.name is in one of the views. In here. Ah. Come on. That one, okay. Channel.organization, and it's going to be channel.site.name. No, we still want the organization, so we can add a 3 there, I guess, if we want, or anything like that. I don't think we ever really want to refer to that much. I think that's just for administrative purposes, like having that association there. Right, okay, so does that finish our final test? Amazing. Okay, you've got the usual question, right? The test passed. Do the tests actually test what we think they're testing? Is the main thing. I don't think we went too far off track there. Let's do some more whip commits. Let's tidy up after ourselves. This whole thing is about tidying up. Let's see what we got in here. Loads of stuff. Okay, so we added in this association here. And removed the organization ID. Okay. So let's give that to add channel. No. Add channel site association, remove. Again, I'm not really worrying about the commits. We're going to tidy those up later. Remove channel org association. Cool, just going to commit that for now. Let's not worry about it. Then we're going to do the model relationship changes and the specs for those, just using those like shoulda matches there. Cool. And also let's do the factory as well. Update model associations for site channel org. Again, not a great commit. We'll worry about that in the tidy up. That one we're not changing. So this one and this one are the same. So update control panel auth to use via site. I'll hopefully know what that means when it comes back to it. And then here fix reference to station in a view file. That'll do for now. Right. So that is the 4 millionth work in progress commit. That's cool. That'll only take 3 years to sort that out into decent commit messages, but let's not worry about that right now. What we want to worry about is the carrying on our tidy up. So we now have, during our user creation, the site and the organization being created. And at that last step, we associated the site Oh, that's perfect. Yeah, that's we associated the site with the user, and now we use that in the channel auth. Okay, cool. So did we actually... Okay, cool. So we could actually create a channel on that second stage on the details controller if we wanted to. So if you remember in site setup, which is the namespace we use, we also had this details controller, but we didn't add in anything we wanted to ask for there. We just skipped it, and in the view, we just popped in a link. We're like, hey, yeah, there'll be a form here, and then you go through and add it. So let's just check that this still like even works, because we haven't looked at any UI today. It's all been code. So let's destroy. Well, we delete half our data, so I'd imagine nothing is here. So let's go back, let's turn a server on and check that anything at all works. Again, because we've got a few tests, we're assuming something works. I don't know if we added in our feature test. So I think the last part of tidy up might be adding tests for our users controller, or actually create the user, and then maybe an end-to-end feature test if we didn't make one of those before. So lots of tidy up today. Cool. Okay, so we want to create a site. We're going to call it test site, ! Because we're super excited about it. Create the site. Test site has been created. This is step 2. This is where the form will go to update the site model. I was pretty excited then, added exclamation marks everywhere here. Then skip to step 3, add your user details. So that would be like test1 at example.com. Add in a password, sign up. Ooh, so the organization must exist. Organization can't be blank. For what? For the site? Ah, right. Okay, cool. So, yep, that was where we were at before. So here, we can So we have the site. Where were we creating this organization automatically? Was that when we were creating the site? Oh yeah, cool. Okay, so that's where the organization comes from. Site organization was used at organization. But that must have been empty. Were we just saying that's a nil? Totally confused by that line now. Doesn't really matter. So we need the user organization to equal the site organization. Again, this is where we have the issue where we haven't actually verified that the site they've just made is that it's the same person, but it doesn't matter right now. So let's check if that works now. And again, if we did, obviously we don't have a feature test that goes end to end, because that would have broken, and all our tests are currently passing. We want a test that breaks when something like that happens, when we break that flow. But if we now well, let's go back again. So let's make a new site. Cool. So 28, and then we'll do the same thing again. We'll do test2 at example.com. Although I didn't make the last one, so we could have reused that email address. Cool. So what was happening there is the validation was kicking in because we had said a user must have an organization to be created. We know we've created an organization as part of this site onboarding, so the site must also have an organization. I think we added. Okay, we should probably add the validation as well. Yeah, God, it's really annoying doing this in a, like, should do more planning. But I'm already chuffing myself for having tidied up the work from last week into commit, so let's not try and stretch ourselves too far. So we know that there will be an organization, but there should be one on the site anyway. I think we said earlier in the stream we were going to leave that off because we might want to create them without it, but anyway. That would fail if there wasn't one anyway, because that has to be present on the user. We're then going to create the user. So let's add a feature test to get us end to end on that one. So I think we had a couple of feature tests. I think they were just checking that a page rendered. Yeah, we had one for... So let's do sites set. Do them like... If you can't do them like per action, but like name the thing we're doing. So let's do... I always find the naming of these are often a little bit all over the place in different repos. People name feature tests differently. So let's do... let's just do end to end because it's in a setup namespace. So the end to end is implied as to what is happening end to end. People would probably put create site or something like that, but you might have a feature test that was just checking one of the steps to look for all the validations within it. Then you might not do that within the end to end, or you could do it however you wanted. So let's get our boilerplate from over here. And what we want is scenario. I should be able to create a site and user account. Okay, so let's just visit the homepage, and then we want to fill in whatever that box is called. Site name. And then we want to click button, and that button is create site. Again, you don't have to do like click button create site. Like you might not always want to tie your test to the wording on the button, for example. So you can do different syntax here. I'm not going to worry too much about that for now. Let's just see if this runs, because I think from memory we had some issue getting feature test to run last time. Can't quite remember. No, that does seem to do something. Okay, so let's click that. Blah blah blah. Let's destroy this because it's going to fail if we've already got one. Hello. Okay, so we then should have one that just says we don't have anything here, so we can just do click link. Again, I'm just hard coding this to there because we don't really care too much right now. Then we should be able to enter our, so we want to fill in and then we want to do use password, and then it'll be like whatever our requirements were. I can't remember what they were. I'm just mashing keys. Sign up, capital S, lowercase p. And then we can just check for like the flash message or something. Let's see if that runs to begin with. Don't even know what the flash message says. Cool. Well, we can check in the controller and just see. That's so on the end-to-end we can then say expect page. I think have content should get us there. Cool. So if that's kind of your first time looking at a feature test, basically, or like, you know, you're wondering about testing at different levels. So in other tests, you might like check for the number of users to go up and the number of sites to go up and things like that. But because this is a feature test, that kind of higher level test, we're actually just looking at the behavior of the system. So you're looking at the actual success message being shown to the user on the screen. You would assume, looking at a feature test, that there was probably a controller test, model test, whatever other levels of tests you're doing that are checking for each individual thing doing what they expect. So we would expect to have controller tests at each of those steps, maybe a feature test at those steps, whatever you're doing, and then model tests to check the behavior is right. So you then don't have to, at that higher level, check like, did one user get created? Did one thing get created? Site get created, for example? Because as long as the UI says the right thing, you assume that's happened. So that's kind of the logic that we're using here, checking this and not checking the database for the count. Speaking of which, we actually don't have our site set up user control. So we're going to keep this is actually going to round up our tidying up for today, and then maybe we can come back later and do a mega rebase. I might have to do that rebase in 2 parts because it's so long. it's gonna be one of those things that's not fun. So this is the kind of step 3 on our setup. So we have that homepage one, then we have our details controller, which doesn't do anything at the moment. It just renders out a page, and a users controller. And what we can do here is look at what action we used. Use new, so let's do that one first. And we don't have any kind of check around needing to be logged in or anything for this. If you remember, that's something that we hadn't really come across. So we pretty much think you do need to have a valid site, because that's all we need to have. I think that one might be it. So let's try and just run this users controller. Cool, so got a typo. And it's the create that we expect to do real work. We actually do need all of that set up still. We do still need a site. We can do that per action. So this was going to be our create action. Yeah, I'm happy to. We could lift that site up. But we do, let's say we do have a valid site. And we also want to say valid params. We're just going to check our happy path here first. Always not got used to that existing. And I usually name that something that indicates that we're checking that. So we would then have our valid params. That's a hash, and it is email. Example.com, and then I think it's just password, and we would again mash some keys randomly. So I think those are valid params for this. Should create a new user record, I think, is the thing we really care about it doing. So we want to post that. And we want those params to be the valid params. So we're happy with that happening. And but we expect that post to make the change. And in this one, we can check something like user.count. Again, it's not. I have seen people not use these because they actually want to check. You say like use a .where email address, something goes up, so because you don't want to check your total count of users if you're a tester. Not like transactional and stuff, but I think we're fine. Should be fine for now. And how much do we want it to change it by? We want to change it by 1. So let's see if that. Oh, that's the wrong test anyway. Oh no, it is the right test, but it's got a typo in. It's got a typo. Does that need to? Would that be inferred as a hash, or does that actually need to be inside those? Is that the issue? Or is it within? Oh, is it that you expect the user to be there? Is it like that? Sorry. From memory, remember we looked at in the last stream, you can actually go and look at that bin Rails roots page and see where the matchup isn't happening. Okay, cool. So let's make that a bit more readable. Moving the actual action out to a block just so we can see what we're trying to get the test to do. Because all we really care about is that we expect the create action to change the user count by 1. The other thing... The other thing we actually care about is that the user is associated with the right organization. So we could do that in here. Because then if it wasn't, it wouldn't work. Don't know if I've already done this that way before. Does that work? So I should create a new user record, create a new user associated with the site's organization. And then this one. So has that broken anything else if we just do... Oh, I've got to get that thing working again. See if everything else passes. Cool, so we now have an end-to-end, so we would expect that to break if we screw that up again. So we can just check that what does an organization have? Just checking that actually breaks. Doesn't validate anything. Does it have a name? Yeah, name. Let's just look for that failure. Of course, it was associated with, whereas that if we just change that test back, I don't really know the value of that. So it was in the user's control specs. So it's this. So this presumably now still passes. Yeah, so it does create the user, but it associates with the wrong thing. You would assume at that point that things had really gone to shit if you were if you'd done that. Like the user shouldn't then get to the next page because you would use the auth on the next step to check it. But you know, it's just an extra thing making that test a bit more strict. Okay, so let's tidy that up again with more commits. Doing loads of commits today, super good. These are all basically part of the same work. These are all pretty much tests for... Oh, actually we could... add feature test for user onboarding. And then on this one, we are saying add tests for sites setup. Yeah, users controller. Cool. Okay, so in this whole stream, we haven't actually come a huge amount further with what it looks like for the user. So if you are watching this from the learner's perspective, that is 99% of development. You change a huge amount under the hood and then the user's like, hey, nothing's changed. That is a lot of life. So hopefully if this is the only other part of one of the streams you actually watch, that's still useful to know that before you go in. Let's see what to, and I think that kind of rounds us off pretty neatly. So let's go back to see what we have covered. So this stream, we have essentially taken, actually I'm going to jump back to our other view just so we can look at this again. So we have added in this relationship now maps to our models where the user has an organization, the organization has many sites, and the site can have many channels. We now can do what we like with those and treat them right. We had previously kind of skipped a step and not actually changed we'd drawn a diagram out but not actually changed any of the associations and just carried on as if the work had been done. That's why we're tidying up this stream this week. And now these map to what we expect to happen. We have also gone through and added tests to the steps that didn't have them last week and done the migrations to make these associations work. So like I said, I am going to try and do a homework edition either later today or if not, definitely before the end of the week, trying to do a rebase because it was pretty, people were pretty interested in it last time. So let's take one last look at how many we have got. So much work. So I think there's probably like, I think we could maybe do like a couple of bits of work of bringing like the gems down and initially getting them installed, and maybe dividing this up into one for the initial channelsy stuff. That's all the namespacing stuff. Because we can write in a PR, we can just say this, you know, we would never approach things like this normally. We're just doing it because that was what the stream was about. Or maybe we disassociate the two altogether and just we go straight through and say, actually, we don't really care how the streams flowed. We actually care about the PRs making sense, in which case we could completely reorder these to put all of the gems up front. We could go through and pull all the migrations up together to build those associations in, do all the model stuff, and then do all the building on top. That's more work, and there's no real value in it particularly, because it's probably more useful for people, if anyone stumbles across these streams in the future and wants to look at a chunk of work, it might be more useful if the pull request matches it slightly, so they can kind of see what changed. and then also how we address that moving forward. I mean, I know we just deleted a bunch of associations we made earlier. Okay, well, let's worry about that on the let's worry about that on the homework edition where we'll do that. We'll get those up, get them into well-written commit messages, hopefully into separate pull requests, get those merged in, and get that up to date. And then this kind of wraps up this onboarding stuff. So I think we can then look at, I don't know, I mean, we could look at something like getting it up onto Heroku next week. Like, I mean, people can then, hammer the site that we put on there with spam data. But that would at least accelerate us to more towards a realistic situation where let's say we then build a site for Sunday Club and we treat that as the production database, and maybe we say that we're not going to break that, like that that then adds a constraint onto us. So rather than having to add in complexity by adding models that we don't need, we then say, right, well, actually we're going to not trash the production database. How does that work? Because I think from a learner's perspective that might be really useful, because so often when you're in the early stages you don't have to deal with that issue because you're often working locally or on an app that people aren't using, so you can just trash things and it's a real lifesaver. But then when you then bump into issues of, like, we just destroyed a column earlier that had null values and we wanted to add a column that didn't that didn't allow null values, how do we handle that? What would that mean? And those are probably more interesting to come across. So let's do that. So thank you to everyone who watched this morning. I said hello, super appreciated. I will post about these three. I haven't really been linking to anything, but now that the three onboarding ones are kind of, not finished, but like wrapped up a bit, I'll post a link on a couple of places with the 3 episodes. People can hopefully find those useful. And yeah, maybe we'll do Heroku next week, and then we can just pop a little thing on there this is where people can go, and then we'll actually have a website up, which will be so exciting. Yeah, that sounds like a really good idea to do for next week. Let's go and look at getting something up and running. All right, cool. Have a great Sunday, everyone. See you later.